Welcome to Innovation Credit Union's special meeting of members, where we'll present information on our special resolution to apply to become a federally regulated credit union. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bruce Sack, President of the Board of Innovation Credit Union, and I'll be your MC tonight. In hopes of giving as many Innovation members the opportunity to participate tonight, we are pleased to offer live streaming via our website and also have members joining us from 20 locations, so a warm welcome to every member in attendance. We published the notice of this special meeting in Cut Knife Courier, Gravelbrig Tribune, News Optimist, Northern Pride, Southwest Booster, Spiritwood Herald, Unity Wilkie Press Herald, and the Canada Gazette, as well as our advice centers and our website. We also included the notice in the voting and ballot packages we mailed to all eligible voting members. Copies of the ads are available upon request if anybody would like to review them. I would now like to introduce the head table. To my immediate left, Daniel Johnson, Chief Executive Officer, Innovation Credit Union. At the far end, Shelley Collier, Executive Assistant, who will be our recording secretary tonight. And Pat Caroni, our parliamentarian from Alla Waller, Zinkham Waller Law Firm. And last but not least, Ian MacArthur, Chief People Development Officer, Regional Returning Officer. I'm also pleased to introduce the 2017 Innovation Credit Union Board members in attendance. Mike Davis, First Vice President. Russ Seaman, Second Vice President. Gordon Lightfoot, Past President. And we have Gwen Humphreys, Darlene Kingwell, Jerome Brew, Ian Hamilton, and Brian Zanuck that are in locations where we're streaming tonight. Other guests joining us are from Credit Union Deposit Guarantee Corporation, Brent Schellenberg, Corey Stephan, and Chelsea Bearcloth. And our returning deputy returning officer from Myers Norris Penny, Yvonne Morrison. An additional guest sitting at the end of the table there, and I think he's pretty well known in credit union land, Mr. Bob Waller from Olive, Waller, Zink, and Waller. And many of our neighboring credit unions. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. Rules of the meeting. We follow Robert's Rules of Order as well as meet all the regulatory requirements from the Credit Union Act. This is a single-purpose special meeting to consider and, if thought fit, to approve the special resolution to apply to become a federally regulated credit union. No other matters or motions are to be considered at this meeting. We ask that anyone addressing the meeting please use the 4 microphones and give your name prior to speaking. Members who are viewing our meeting from any of our remote locations, please indicate to your meeting host if you wish to address the meeting or ask a question, and you will be invited to do so by the meeting chair in Swift Current. People viewing our special meeting from home can submit a question online, which will be relayed to the meeting. Our CEO, Daniel Johnson, will be making a presentation on Innovation's plan for continuance as a federally regulated credit union. This will be followed by a question and answer forum where you will be able to ask questions on the presentation and our plans for continuance. We will try to limit the number of questions to 2 per person and may be able to circle back to address additional questions as time permits. After the question period is concluded, the resolution will be formally presented. After that, it is an open discussion where there is the opportunity for those wishing to speak to the resolution. We ask that those wishing to speak to the resolution do so only once, so ample time is available for all who wish to speak to it. Voting period begins when open discussion on the resolution is concluded, and the conclusion of the voting period is December the 8th, 2017. Myers Norris Penny has been appointed by the Board of Directors as the Chief Returning Officer providing oversight to the electoral process. I'll ask Ian MacArthur to provide the number of members in attendance to confirm our quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pleased to announce that in Swift Current we have 248 members present, and joining us from all locations together, 1,223 members are in attendance this evening. We also have approximately 30 people who have joined online from at home. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to say that we do have quorum.
Thank you. As a formality, can I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented and also approve the appointment of the parliamentarian? Okay. Brad Torrey. Seconder? Sorry. Brandy Appel. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Purpose of the meeting. After comprehensive research, analysis, and deliberation, your Innovation Board of Directors decided in May 2016 to pursue applying to become a federal credit union. We believe this will give innovation the flexibility to continue logical growth, keeping us sustainable for you and future generations to come. Our CEO, Daniel Johnson, will speak in more detail regarding the rationale for our decision and the importance of the vote. This is an exciting time for Innovation Credit Union. We have an opportunity to strengthen our organization's future and live up to our name, our mission, and our vision. Thank you in advance for voting on this historic proposal. I would like to call Dan to discuss Innovation's plan for continuance as a federal credit union.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. So my presentation, some of you have probably seen it before, but I think it's very important that I go through it again. And the reason is that this is your credit union, and it's very important that we go through all of the information and the rationale and the reason why we concluded that becoming a federal credit union is important to our organization. I really want to thank you guys for coming out. I know it's a busy time. It's always a busy time for for our organization and for you guys. So it's real big thanks for you guys to come out and talk about the future of your organization, because you are owners of this organization. I think it's very important that we have a good conversation about this very exciting initiative. You see, every credit union in Saskatchewan is provincially regulated, and we don't have the ability to proactively grow beyond the provincial walls. So becoming a federally regulated credit union allows us to do that. So I have a few tasks tonight when I do my presentation. One of them is to talk about the reasons why. And for some, for potentially you and I, we have to understand that this decision is for the future. It's for future generations. It's for your kids and your kids' kids. It's providing your credit union the flexibility to be able to grow and evolve and be around forever. So that's a task that I have tonight. The other thing I want to talk about is some of the impact that you'll have as a member. I want to talk to you about you as an owner as well. And so those are some of the things I want to share with you this evening. The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that we're doing this from a position of strength. And that's a very important consideration. Because when you're looking at something this significant, this substantial, it's important to do it from a position of strength. Your credit union is a very sound, solid organization. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit as well. And the other thing, in case I forget, I want to relay to you guys that we're not looking to do this so we can take over Canada. We're not looking to do this so we can grow wildly across the country and build locations. This is primarily a digital strategy. And what we want to do is ensure that our organization continues to grow like this. So we've had a nice, solid growth pattern thanks to the the business that you guys have provided us. And we want to make sure that that continues. We're not looking for massive growth. We're just looking for that to continue into the future, because we believe that an organization that is growing, that has flexibility to grow, has better ability to deal with things like disruptors that I'll talk to you about in a little bit. The other thing that we talk about at Innovation is that we want to make sure that we also don't see a scenario where we go status quo and then we see things leveling off. So those are the things that I want to talk to you about in this presentation and these few slides. So Innovation Credit Union is 10 years old. But of course, we're a combination of a number of credit unions coming together, and those credit unions are obviously older than 10 years. But as Innovation, we're 10 years old. We're the third largest credit union in the province. We're about the 19th largest credit union in Canada. And just to give you a few more tidbits about your credit union, we have about 51,000 members, about 24 locations serving those members, and a number of different channels for you guys to be able to bank. And we do that through about 400 staff. So our number one asset in Innovation is our staff group. And that gives you, I guess, an indication of what your credit union looks like today. And again, thanks to you, we've been able to arrive at a time where we're a nice, strong, stable organization, and looking forward to our discussion later tonight. So there's two things on this slide that I want to talk to you about, and it's our vision and mission. And the reason I want to mention it to you is because this vision and mission was inspired by you guys. So rather than having a small group create the vision and mission for your credit union, we actually took the research and the dialogue and discussion we had from our members and brought that together for these two statements, because we believe that if we create our longer term or medium term goals from input from you guys, then the likelihood of success for your credit union is greater. And so you can see our vision and mission talks about things like being responsive, providing service anywhere, anytime. Those are the things that we've heard from you guys, and that's how we built our vision and mission. This slide here talks about a few more things that are very, very important to us, and they're the cooperative principles. What I love about Innovation Credit Union is that we just don't pick a few of them to align to, we look at them all, and we substantially try to align to all of the cooperative principles. I'm going to talk about them a little bit more in detail in subsequent slides, but we believe that those cooperative principles are the reasons why we're successful, because it's a very competitive landscape out there, and this set of principles allows us to differentiate in that competitive landscape. So I want to mention them right off the bat, and I'll also talk to them again as we get further into the dialogue and discussion. And the other thing that we believe is that in a growing credit union, in a growing organization, you have better ability to line up to those cooperative principles. So let's talk about disruptors. So this decision that we're putting in front of you guys this evening just didn't happen in a planning session in 2016. This decision came about after a long set of research and analysis, and kind of started back even in 2012. So we've been researching and understanding what we call disruptors out there. And in the financial services industry, there's really three basic categories of disruption. There's the competition, there's the rapid change in consumer behavior and the demographics, and then the third one is technology. And those together create unprecedented disruption in our industry. And as a result, unprecedented disruption for your credit union. So I want to go through those because they're very important building blocks to the story we want to talk about today and this evening. So let's talk about competition. So when you think about competitors to the credit union, to your credit union, usually you think about the traditional competitors. You think about the big banks, and that's true. They're for sure great competitors. FCC is another really good competitor that we compete with day in and day out. And we've competed with those organizations for a long, long time. So when we talk competition at the credit union, it's not just about these competitors anymore. There's new entrants. So back in 2012, we put this slide up in front of a similar audience to this. So in 2012 at our annual general meeting, we put this slide up and we asked the question, we said, how long do you think it would be until these companies decide they want to do what credit unions do? They want to do what banks do. And I would say back then, probably part of the audience said, yeah, that probably could happen. And there's probably some others thinking, likely not. But we put the slide up by design because in the next slide, we actually showed the press release of those companies getting into financial services. So the reason we think it's disruptive is that these companies are bigger than countries, right? So if they want to get into your industry, they will. And they pick on really big industries. They're in the movie industry, they're in the automobile industry, and now they're in the financial services industry. So not only do we have those traditional competitors, we have these mega companies that have decided to get into our space. And the other thing that we think about when we think about those companies is that people love those companies. So if they came to you or your kids and said, hey, we want to do what credit unions do, there's probably a strong likelihood that people would consider that. So the disruption's starting to build. Traditional competitors, these mega companies, and then we have what we call the fintechs. So fintechs is just a fancy word for a technology company that wants to do financial services, right? So that's where the fintech comes from. And it's truly disruptive because just in Canada alone, there's over 1,400 brand new fintechs in our space, just doing payments, right? So when I talk about payments, I talk about things like ways to pay for things, ways to consume. So we got traditional competitors, those mega companies, these fintechs that are in our space, just in payments, and then there's another 12,000 of these across the globe. And these guys and gals are getting into our space on doing the other things that we do well, like lending or borrowing or providing financial advice and guidance. So for us, again, this isn't something new, it's been building for a while now. We believe competition is a lot more than what it used to be, and it's truly disruptive. So I've provided some information, but I think it's important each time we pause at these disruptors, we talk about your credit union and well, what's the impact to your credit union? Because it truly has been impactful. As an example, this is a chart of innovation's financial margin, right? And due to competition, we have a different financial margin, certainly compared to when I first started in the credit union system. And even back in 2007, our financial margin was roughly around 4%. So what I mean by that is that credit unions do a lot of things. And one of the things we do is we take in deposits and we lend them out. So for example, back in 07 or earlier than that, if someone came in and brought in some deposits, let's say we gave them 2% for their deposit. And then we turn around and lend it out at 6%. So that's where we would keep 4%. And it would allow us to pay for salaries and power and lights, invest into things like banking systems. So that wasn't too long ago where credit unions and innovation had a 4% margin. Today, due to competition, it's now 2.56. So in that same example, when someone brings in their deposit, we give them 2%, we now lend it out at 4.56. But we think that's a great thing because you guys as members and as consumers are getting a great deal. And at Innovation, we embrace competition because it makes a great environment for our members. You know, we're a better organization because of it, we're sharper, we're providing great rates, but you can see the impact it's had on your organization. As an example, if we had a 4% margin today, we'd have an extra $32 million in profits per year as an organization to give back to the communities, to give back to you guys as members, to invest in things into the future. So it's been truly impactful, but the bottom chart gives you an indication of how well we've done managing that disruption. Again, at Innovation, we're not profit driven, but we think it's very important to earn appropriate returns so that we're a sound, stable organization into the future. And that bottom chart gives you an indication of the solid performance that our organization has had thanks to you guys. So that's the first category of disruption. Let's talk about the second one. And that really is talking about another force that's pretty tough to deal with. So you have to really get to understand it. And that's things like demographics and things like changing consumer behavior. So there's two elements I want to speak to. The first one talks to changing consumer behavior. And we're seeing it all the time. And it's not just my kids that are changing their behavior. And when I mean changing behavior, I'm talking about the way they go about banking and financial services. It's everyone. I'm seeing it in I'm seeing it in my in-laws, I'm seeing it into my peers. So there's lots of change, and as an organization, we have to make sure that we're adapting and evolving to that change. So as an example, if you look at the chart, you can see that we operate on the western side of the province. And we drew circles around each one of those locations. But those other black dots that you see on the screen represent members of innovation as well. So as you can see, over time, we have a situation where we have a lot of our members that reside well outside of our traditional area. So even at innovation, we're seeing that the way people go about their financial services is a lot different than it used to be. And it's something that we're understanding. Because it's very important for us as an organization to continue to build on that. Because the financial services industry was really built on the coattails of the baby boomers, and as they move into retirement, we have to make sure that the credit union is situated to be relevant to the new member or the current member, right? So we want to make sure we're building all of those various channels for our membership to bank in. Now, I'm not here to say that you need to choose a different channel. What I love about innovation is that we believe we're a full-service credit union and that we're building all of the various channels for you to do your banking in. Because we want to make sure that we're relevant now and into the future. And that's, again, one of those tasks I have tonight, to talk about the future, positioning innovation for the future, because these consumers of the future, we want to make sure they're choosing us to be their financial institution. So let's have a glimpse into the consumer behavior change of the innovation member. So this chart here represents the interactions we have with you guys. So the blue bars represent the interactions we have with you guys in person, and the green bars represent the interactions we have with you guys digitally. So as you can see, over a period of time, there's been a rapid and massive shift in the way innovation members go about their banking. So again, it's not just happening in Ontario or BC or in Saskatoon and Regina. That rapid shift in the behavior, the way people go about their banking, is happening right here at Innovation. Again, something that we've noted and something we want to make sure that we have the proper channels for you guys to be able to choose whatever channel you want to use to bank. So that's the rapid change in the consumer behavior. The other part of this category is demographics. So, and you know, again, we've been looking at this for quite a while, and this is recently confirmed by the 2016 census. So when we compared 2011 census to 2016, what we found is that in our trading area, we have flat, declining communities. We have a few communities that are growing, but they're more in the north. So as you can see on this chart, well, maybe not so much, it's kind of blurry even for me, but as you can see, in the region that we operate, the communities are either flat with respect to population growth. We have some communities that are declining. Our fastest growing location is Shell Lake, actually, and they grew about 15% from 2011 to 2016, but that represented 23 people, right? So from a relative perspective, it's still something that we're monitoring and measuring as an organization. So the flexibility that we're looking for by being federally regulated allows us to grow beyond the region that is in a flat or declining population. It's not that we're going to turn our attention away from this region, because actually it's going to work to the point where we're actually going to be refocusing on our region, but it gives us more flexibility to deal with that. The other thing when it comes to demographics is the average age of the innovation member, if we took them all together, is 48.8. Now that seems like a reasonable number, but for us, a few years ago, it was 46, right? So in a time where our organization's done a really good job bringing on new members and younger members, we're still finding that the average age is moving to the right. And so for us, that's concerning, especially when we look at the rest of the province where the average age is 38. So we're about 10 years greater than the province. We're about 6 or 7 years older than the rest of Canada. So the flexibility that we would have by being federally regulated would allow us to access markets that have a different demographic. So what does that mean? So at Innovation, this graph gives you an idea of all of the deposits on the consumer side of our balance sheet. So it's roughly about $1 billion in deposits. And as you can see, it's skewed to the right. And that kind of makes sense, because those who are older typically have saved more, they've worked longer, so they have more money than the younger generation. And that's probably a very similar graph to a lot of financial organizations. But in our consideration at Innovation, we want to provide a better funding base. So what what we want to do here is augment the current deposit base, because when you think about it, your organization, your credit union, still is in the business of taking deposits and lending them out. That generates over 70% of our revenue. So we want to make sure we have a solid deposit base to be able to lend off of. So when we look at this, there's a little bit more risk in there than we want. We're not saying that we don't want to honor and respect and cherish all of those deposits, because we certainly do. What we want to do is create an environment that looks like this. So we want to take an environment that's skewed to the right, and then we want to generate the orange. And that's really fundamentally what we're after with respect to creating a more diversified deposit base. Because when you look at this scenario, over 80% of our deposits are in the hands of people 55 or older. Over 47% of our deposits are in the hands of people 75 or older. So to us, that's too much concentration. Maybe not for today, but as we move forward, it's a little bit more concentration that we like. So having flexibility to go into markets that have a greater population or a younger population allows us to create an environment like this. So essentially what we're up to from this perspective is looking to generate new members where you see the orange. Again, still respecting and honoring all of those who've made us successful as an organization. So the last category I want to talk to you about with respect to disruption is technology. And so technology is a number of different things for innovation. First of all, it's a catalyst. And what I mean by that is that this chart up here was produced by Deloitte, and they showed the impact technology has had over time. And if you look at the green line here, you can see that technology, it had an impact, but this is where we are today. As you can see, where there's an exponential impact technology is having on a whole bunch of different things. It's a catalyst to the change in consumer behavior. It's a catalyst to the amount of competition that we have as an organization. So technology is a catalyst. It's a friend to us because we think that technology is an ideal thing. Our members are looking for it. We want to make sure that we're building the relative channels that make sense. So it's an important thing for our organization as well. But it's a little bit of a foe. It's a friend, but it's also a bit of a foe. And I always tell this story when I'm talking about technology. So a few years back, we were merging with East End Credit Union. And I know East End is online today, so I think there's a whole bunch of you probably in the same community hall that we had our conversation with their membership with. So when we went into East End, we were talking about the benefits of coming together as two credit unions. And we were having the conversation in the community hall. So if you've ever been in the East End Community Hall, it's an older building. It's very similar to the hall in my hometown. I grew up in Elrose, just north of here. And when you think about it, it's an older building. The floors have seen 1,000 dances. They're kind of worn out. So when we went into the utility room to get an extension cord, we found this brand new apparatus coming into the utility room. And it stood out because you have this older facility and this brand new thing coming in. And what it was is fiber optics. So fiber optics was coming into the community hall at East End. And we thought, so SaskTel's mandate is to get fiber optics into all of the schools and libraries and communities in Saskatchewan. So the first response was, well, this is ideal. East End now has fiber optics. High-speed internet is in East End. But that quickly turned to a bit of a negative, in that now high-speed internet is in East End, meaning that instantly and overnight, the competition is now in East End, and they can start winning business away from the credit union. They don't have to build a building, they don't have to hire people. So sometimes when we look at technology, we believe it creates a bit of an unfair or uneven playing field. Because when you think about it, everyone gets to come into our region and compete, but we don't have the business powers to be able to go beyond our provincial walls in a proactive manner in order to compete with them. So they're competing with us, and we're winning the war. We're doing great as an organization. We're growing. We're being successful. So we believe having that flexibility to go beyond the provincial walls is something that's important to us. And technology isn't going away. At Innovation, again, what I love about our board, what I love about our staff, is that when we look at all this disruption, we just don't curl up in the corner and say, well, it's probably going to go away, or let's hope it goes away. We actually embrace technology. We embrace the disruption because to get to know that disruption allows us to move forward as an organization. And this is a big part of technology. It's the smartphone, right? Out of coincidence, we share the same anniversary as the smartphone. It's 10 years old as well. It's ubiquitous, it's addictive, and it's transformational. So when you think about it, and I'm not saying you guys need to use the smartphone to bank, but we have a lot of members that use this device. And by 2020, over 80% of all of the adults in the world will have one of them. So for us, that device is a new channel. It's actually probably one of the primary channels members of today and tomorrow will be utilizing. So if it is the primary channel going forward, then our view is that why would we restrict ourselves to the western side of Saskatchewan? So again, that's the thinking that we have when we look at things like technology, because it's a number of different things. So I'm going to shift gears now. I talked about the disruptors. I've talked about how it's impacting your organization. I've talked how we've embraced disruption and how we've picked growth as an organization to move forward. Because really what we want to do here is to take your credit union so that it has the flexibility to grow. Again, we're not looking to grow wildly across Canada. We just want to make sure that that growth that we've seen over the last number of years continues. And we would like that flexibility to move forward as an organization. So when you think about it, it's a credit union with the flexibility to grow national, but headquartered right here in this province, right here where you know innovation to be. So there's three groups I want to talk to you about. And then we can open up to some conversation and discussion. So there's three groups, and you guys are part of two groups. The first group you're part of is as a member. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But you also are in the ownership group that I want to talk to you about as well. So let's talk about the benefits to you guys as members of Innovation Credit Union. And we've done this presentation a lot. The other thing that we've done is we have talked to over 29,000 of our members. So when you think about it, we have a staff of 400, and we've had 29,000 conversations with you guys talking about this information. And it's very important that we have this conversation so we can give you an idea of, what are the impacts to you as a member, as an owner, and other things like your community. So this is the difficult part, because becoming a federal credit union allows us to ensure that we have the ability to grow into the future, right? So it's creating a flexible environment so that we can deal with things like disruption. We want to make sure that in a growing organization, we continue to do things like invent new products, create products, or get better at the products that you have today. And then the other thing that we want to do is, remember those cooperative principles? We want to make sure that as an organization, we have the ability to substantially line up with all of them, because we think they're very, very important. And in a growing organization, you have better ability to do that. So when you think about the things that we currently have, we think that we have a really strong proposition. We have great people, we have great products and services. We've built a program called Member Rewards. And again, this is fundamentally built by those cooperative principles. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. The first column that you see on the left is what we call save. The middle column is what we call earn, and the right column is what we call give. So I want to talk to you about that. The left-hand side is the save. So a few years ago, we felt that it was important for us to give back to our members more frequently. So what we did is we created the free account. And now we have a scenario where we've moved over 26,000 of our members from paying fees to free. So we think that's very important, because the frequency is now increased of you guys seeing value by being a member of Innovation. So it was an important consideration because it's hinged on those cooperative principles, but what we've done is just increase the frequency. We've created greater value out of that, those set of principles. So that's the save part. The middle part is earn. So what we mean by that is that for everyday banking, you guys have the ability to earn. And so over the last 10 years, we paid back to you guys over $21.5 million back to you guys, given the level of business that you do with your organization. Very, very important, crucial element to our organization. And we also kind of modernized that, because we used to do that on an annual basis, and now we're paying it out more frequently. So there's more frequency for you guys to see the value. So you have the save element, you have the earn element, and then of course there's the give. And at Innovation, what we did is we actually hard-coded into our organization, where we provide 2 to 4% of our pre-tax profit back to our communities and the regions that we serve. So over the last 10 years, another $4.8 million has gone back to the communities that you guys are a part of. And again, that's a very important consideration. And when you think about it, in a growing organization, 2 to 4% of a growing organization means more value. 2 to 4% in a status quo organization is different than that. So again, in this part, this slide, what I want to talk to you about is that whole notion of, in a growing, evolving credit union, we have better ability to ensure that these programs continue to evolve. So those are some of the impacts to you as a member, but there's also another very important conversation that we have to have with you guys as members. So in a provincial credit union, we're regulated by the Credit Union Deposit Guarantee Corporation, based out of Regina. They also provide 100% protection on all of your deposits in the credit union. When a credit union becomes federally regulated, you have to move deposit insurance providers. So if we were to get the blessing to go and become federally regulated, we'd move from the Credit Union Deposit Guarantee Corporation to the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation. Those are the same guys and gals that insure deposits at the banks, but the level is different. So you will go from 100% protection to $100,000 protection per category. And so what I mean by per category is that it's not just a blanket 100,000 on all of your deposits. It's 100,000 per category. So I'll use an example. Let's say you had $100,000 in your checking account. That would have $100,000 protection or guarantee on it. If you had $100,000 in your TFSA, you'd have an additional $100,000 protection on that. Let's say you had some RIFs or RSPs, you'd also have $100,000 protection on each of those categories. If you had a joint account with your spouse, that account would also have $100,000 protection. So it's not just a blanket 100, there is the ability to have 100,000 per category. So as you can see, depending on the situation, there is the ability to stack that limit. But there is a difference, right? You're going from the Credit Union Deposit Guarantee Corporation environment to the CDIC environment. Very important consideration for you guys to understand. So those are some of the impacts to you as a member, but you also have a different hat to wear, right? So you're also an owner of this credit union, and so you probably should be asking questions about, okay, I see the rationale and reasoning as a member, but what about me as an owner? So as an owner, there's lots of other things to consider. And I talked to them, I think, already, but I'll just summarize a little bit. The first one is that it allows us to live up to those vision and mission statements, those longer term goals that we were created, inspired by you guys. So that's an important consideration. It ensures long-term success. And what I mean by that is that we're doing this from a position of strength, right? So we're not looking to do this from a position of non-financial strength. This is a very important time for our organization, and these are the right times to do it. So the reality is that in a situation where you're in a strong, stable environment, you have a better ability to move forward as an organization, better ability to do the research and the thinking around moving forward. And we want to remain financially strong, and what I mean is remain financially strong. It's a very important consideration. And then I talked to you about the risk with respect to the deposit portfolio. Remember that chart that had the blue and the orange? Again, it's very important for us to have a solid, diversified deposit base to be able to conduct business off of. So that's a very important consideration. So as an owner, those are some of the things you should have as far as things to consider as an owner of Innovation Credit Union. So let's talk about a few other things. So let's say that we were provided the blessing by our membership to move forward to the next phase. So let's say that the vote came in and it provided a positive vote. It doesn't mean that we get to go federal right away. There's still a lot of work to be done. And I think Bruce will talk to this, but we need to have greater than 75% of those who come out to vote need to provide a positive vote for us to move to the next step. But then we still have to get 4 more signatures. We have 4 very important stakeholders that we need to work with, and we continue to work with. So the first one would be our current regulator, the Deposit Guarantee Corporation. They need to provide their blessing. The second one is the provincial government. They need to give us the go-ahead. The federal government also needs to weigh in and provide authority for us to do this. And then the last person or stakeholder group that we need to get authority from or approval from is our new regulators. So as an owner, you should know that you'll be changing regulators. You'll move from the Credit Union Deposit Guarantee Corporation to the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, for short OSFI. That would be the new regulator of your credit union. And again, those are the same regulators that regulate the big banks and other financial institutions in Canada. So those are some of the things as an owner we wanted to share with you tonight as well. So one last group I want to talk to, and then we can open it up to some conversation. And the last group is the staff group. And it's a very important part of the presentation because the staff is our #1 asset. It's the reason why we're successful with doing business with you guys. And so when you think about it, the conversations that we're having with our staff group is that in a growing organization, there's usually more opportunity for things like jobs. There's usually more opportunity for things like career advancement and development. So those are some of the conversations we're having about being a part of an organization that continues to grow. So those are some of the things. But the other thing I want to share with you is that a few years ago, we invested in some technology that we believe is a game changer. So the conversations that we've been having so far with our membership, and we've had a whole bunch of meetings just like this where we sat down and we talked about the future. And the conversations we're having are around things like jobs and locations. So a few years ago, we invested in technology that allows us to look at things a little bit differently. So let's go back to one of the original intents. So we want to make sure that we have the flexibility to grow. Primarily, that growth will be digital. So we're looking to increase our membership primarily in a digital fashion. So if we're growing our members in a digital fashion, we need great people to serve those members. And we have a whole bunch of great people already. So do you remember that slide that I showed you where it shows in advice center traffic relative to digital? We've been presenting that information to our membership and annual meetings, to our staff. So some of the questions I've had so far are things like, well, if there's reduced traffic in some of your locations, are you looking to close them? And so now, with this new technology, we have the ability to hunt around all of our 24 locations and look for people that have capacity. Because if someone is calling in or videoing into our organization, we might find someone in Mancota or Buffalo Narrows that might be having a slower morning, and we can utilize that talent to serve that member. And then as we grow our membership, we can also use that capacity to serve that growing membership. And if we run out of capacity, then we'll just hire more capacity right here in your region. So this dialogue has gone over extremely well with the conversations we've had so far, because really what we've done is we've taken a digital expansion and created an environment where it's going to mean jobs right here in our region. So again, a very important consideration as an organization. So what I'm going to do is just wrap up. And I want to make sure that I kind of speak to all of the considerations. The reality is that we're not looking to go and take over Canada. What we're looking to do is just take a sliver of the market beyond our provincial walls. Right? Only 3% of the population exists in Saskatchewan. We just want a sliver of the market beyond those provincial walls. That will help us as an organization ensure that we're around for future generations. It'll allow us to ensure that we continue to align to those cooperative principles, and it will allow us to ensure that we continue to focus right here in our region, and ensure that we're the same great credit union that you've supported over the years. So that's where I want to stop and pause, and then open it up to conversation here and also in all of our locations. Thank you very much. We'll just wait for conversations. Just Q&A now. Okay. Okay. So I apologize for those who have seen that before, but I think it's some great information for you guys to kind of remind yourself of the opportunity that you have in front of you as owners of this organization. So let's open it up to some questions from the audience, and also we'll be receiving questions from the other 20 locations that are viewing this presentation, this meeting as well.
I'll direct traffic here. Is there any questions in Swift Current? I see one coming to the mic. Microphone number 1, please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Murray Metke. I just wondered, I thought back on one of the slides further back, you had mentioned or the slide had mentioned something about us being the owner members.
Correct.
And I was wondering about these other people in Ontario and Quebec and such. Are they actually owner members as well?
Yeah, so about 5% of our membership, so we have about 51,000 members. About 5% of our members reside outside of the province. And those members that are, let's say they moved away and they continue to deal with innovation, they're also member owners as well, just like yourself here in Swift Current.
I'm referring to the new members coming on in, not existing members who once were with innovation, but these new members that you assume we're going to get.
Yeah, correct. They would be owner members as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, microphone number 2.
Yeah, Jerry Gowen's my name, and I just want to say to managing in his presentation was certainly an excellent package of information. My question is, what was your projected budget for this project, and what do you kind of expect, kind of earnings do you expect with this project?
So the budget, well, maybe I'll just use projected numbers. So we went over budget with this project. Part of the reason is that we underestimated the costs and the level of information that we needed to provide to the membership, and holding events like this. So the budget, or the projected amount that we plan to spend on this project for 2017 represents about 2.6% of our entire operating costs. So that's about $1.5 million. So we're over about $400,000 over the budget that we wanted to come in at. But when we look at the materiality, I mean, it's only 2.6%, but the number is still large. So when we look at the number and the costs, and we look at why it's so costly, we think it's still money well spent. So first of all, it's money well spent because it's an investment into the future. It's a better way to understand all of the disruption to ensure that we're looking at the relevant things. The other thing that we talked about just the last couple weeks is that never before in our organization have we felt so engaged with our membership. So when you think about the costs involved to hosting meetings and sharing information and taking out ads to provide even more information, it does seem costly, but really to us it's not a bad thing. Because the other thing that happens in these conversations is not only are we sharing this whole notion of becoming federal, but we also get a ton of feedback, how we can be a better organization, how we can engage our membership and our owners in a conversation about their organization moving forward. So for us, again, I talk about that materiality. We think it's a healthy number, but it's still money well spent. Anything else, Jerry?
Just what do you expect down the road, or a return on this investment, or what can we look forward to additional revenue through this project?
Yeah, so I think I'll answer that in general terms. So let's just kind of use a scenario where we don't do this. And our view is that we've had a nice solid growth. Our view is that in the longer term, it may start to tail off. So for us, having the flexibility to continue that growth pattern means that we'll be able to continue that. So I can't give you a specific number, exact number of what it means. I mean, in our business plan, we have that information. We currently have an 8-year business plan that's been approved by the board, and also other stakeholders have reviewed it. But in that, one of the things that we're looking at, we want to make sure we don't do this, but the other thing we don't want to see is this. We want to make sure it's a prudent, solid business plan that allows us to ensure innovation is successful into the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we have some people in some of our remote locations that would like to ask some questions. As we go through this, there is a slight delay. So from when I speak here in Swift Current, it takes about 30 seconds to get out to these locations. So we're not just kind of sitting here silently. That is just how the technology is working. So we will start. We have a question in Gravelburg. Gravelburg, when you receive this, please go ahead with your question. How the technology is working. So we will start with a question in Gravelburg. Gravelburg, when you receive this, please go ahead with your question. So just make sure you answer your question. How the technology is working. So we will start with a question in Gravelburg. Gravelburg, when you receive this, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Reno Larishaw from Gravelburg. I have a question and a comment. You keep talking how good the credit union is to the members and everything else. I agree it is now. Once you go with this, it's going to end up being the same as SAS Wheat Pool went. And I think it's all going to go federally, and it's going to be down to twos, because members are going to be gone. The numbers don't matter anymore once you go federal. You're going to end up being like going public. Because members are going to be gone. The numbers don't matter anymore once you go federal.
So I think due to the, can we shut down that audio?
Yeah, we're just working on the.
So due to the technology, it got asked 3 times, so I should get it right. So the way I interpreted the question, and maybe you the same, is they were talking about the SAS Wheat Pool and the concerns they have around what happened to the SAS Wheat Pool, and then also around innovation becoming federally focused versus what we are today. So I'll speak to that, and the reason I'll speak to that is because that question comes up lots. So as an example, we've had over 50 of these conversations, these kind of settings. And so that question has come up. So when I talk about the SAS Wheat Pool, there's a few things. The first one is that we've talked about it a lot. Even before we went down this road, we talked about it because we have people on the board that are familiar with what happened to the Wheat Pool. We have a board member that used to work for the Wheat Pool. My father was a Wheat Pool agent. I was a part of the banking consortium that was working with the Wheat Pool when they were going through their troubles. So when we talk about all those different scenarios, and it's pretty tough to relate innovation to the Wheat Pool, but when I think about some of the things that stood out to the SAS Wheat Pool back then are things that we do not plan to do. So we do not plan to go to the public markets and generate a bunch of capital. We don't plan to take that money and build branches across Canada, or in their case, terminals. We don't plan to take on a whole bunch of debt in order to go and buy things that are not related to our organization. So those are the things that we do not want to do, that potentially is what happened to the Wheat Pool. Because no one, I don't think we really know exactly all of the moving parts of that situation. The one thing I can tell you, though, and it's back to Jerry's question, is that we have an 8-year plan that, again, is a solid, safe, conservative 8-year plan. We're not looking to wildly grow. What we're looking to do is have a nice, solid plan going forward, and those plans are, again, approved by a lot of people, whether it's our board, whether it's our membership, whether it's other stakeholders like regulators that are watching and looking at our future. So that's where I see a lot of difference between what happened to the pool and what we plan as an organization. We're a heavily regulated organization, and we should be, because we're in the business of taking people's deposits and lending them out to someone else. So there's lots of people regulating and watching and auditing. We've got a great governance framework in our organization. So those are the things that we talk about relative to that question. The other question, if I got it right, was around this scenario where we're looking to grow digitally, right? And we are. Today we have 51,000 members. We want to increase our membership over 8 years by another 44,000, primarily in a digital fashion. And again, that means that we'll have a larger membership. So when I talk about that last group and you know, sharing with you how we plan to serve that group, it's going to be served by people right here in your community, right here in your region. So the growth and the jobs that'll be a part of this region is a very exciting proposition for our organization. But even already we've talked about as a board, we've talked about things like, you know, should we have additional representation if we have a whole bunch of members outside of our trading area? So those are things we talk about. But the one important thing to consider is that any changes to that governance, any changes to that model needs to be approved by you guys, right? So it's hard-coded in our bylaws. And so again, I think that's another consideration for you guys as you're trying to understand what the, you know, what the future of the organization will look like. Ian.
Okay, thank you. And Dan, we'll just ask you to speak a little louder into the mic when you answer the questions, please.
Sure.
We have a question in Gull Lake. So the member in Gull Lake, please ask your question.
Okay, I don't have only just one question. I've written down 9. My name is Bill Welk, and I've been a member of Innovation for maybe 3 years. But I've been a credit union member for 60 years. I guess what I want to know, who are the members that really requested you to go on this adventure? Because we're member driven, I take it, still are. And we got into the cost of the YES program. If you had taken $100 and offered it to 19,000 new members, you would have come out with 19,000 new members. Will the YES vote actually give us better borrowing and savings rates? And expanding innovation business outside of Saskatchewan, will this let us diversify to what? You don't tell us that in the information. Twice in the information that you provided to us, you have said you were going to expand the business in Saskatchewan if there's a no vote. Why aren't you doing that now? And is diversification really meaning going into life insurance, brokerage, houses, and what else? I guess vote will increase the risk exponentially, just like the opportunity is exponentially. How are you going to mitigate this? And if we really want to go federally, why not create another credit union, one that is federal, and leave one that is provincial? We can then choose which credit union we want to be members of. And I guess I'll ask my wife's question now. Why are you abandoning the older member? Yes, we're getting older. That's why the ages are getting older. You know, if you look at the provincial average, it's the same thing as what you told us. We're all getting older. I thank you for your time, because I'm voting no.
Okay, so you know, lots of questions there, and hopefully I wrote them down accurately. So let's start with the last one. So this certainly is an effort for us to abandon the older member. As I indicated in the slide, we want to make sure that we're respecting and honoring all of those who have made us successful over the years. That blue on that chart, we want to retain that. What we're looking to do is create the orange. And Over the last number of years, Innovation has done a good job growing its membership, and we've actually grown a lot of new members. But the problem that we see is that when you get into a market where you're saturated, you need to find other markets. You need to grow and have the flexibility to grow. So it's certainly not an effort to step away from those who've made us successful, because that would not be the direction or the direction any organization would want to take. We want to make sure that we're having conversations with you guys and making sure that we're continuing to do good things. When it comes to good things, there's the rates and services. So again, as an organization, we believe we've worked really hard to build all of the various products, given our research, that are relevant to not only the members of today, but also the members of the future. So those channels are very important to us. We have to make sure that we can continue to build. And in a growing organization, there's better ability. A profitable organization, there's better ability to build those channels and products and services. So when I talk about products and services, to us, that's table stakes. And on a daily basis, we monitor and measure not just the competitor across the street. We monitor and measure the products and the pricing of the competitors across Canada, because it's a flat digital world today. So there's people coming into our neck of the woods, and we compete with them. So we believe that that level of competition is a great thing for our members, and we've created an organization that can compete day in and day out. So that's a very important consideration. So when I look at some of the other questions, for sure, it was a costly endeavor for us to reach out and have conversations with over 29,000 members. It was a costly endeavor for sure. But again, it's a cost that we're okay with. I mean, how many financial institutions do you know bring in a forum like this where we have a good meal and have a conversation about the future of your organization? So yeah, it does seem costly, but we believe this is what credit unions are about. It's not only just being a member and just kind of using us a little bit. It's using your credit union a lot and having a say in the future of your organization. And again, it's not sometimes just about you and I today. We have to make sure, and this is the job of the staff at Innovation, we have to make sure that we're positioning your organization for the future. We can't just look at it from today. We have to look at it from the future, because our role is to understand the disruption, understand the market forces, and build an organization that's bulletproof forever, not just for tomorrow. And so when you take all those considerations, that's why the decision was made at Innovation to, again, effectively represent the entire membership to ensure that we're here for the long run, for future generations. So yeah, it is a costly endeavor, but again, we believe we're the right size of organization to do it. We hit above our weight. We're profitable. We can afford to invest into a project like this, even though it seems like a big number. It's an investment into the future that we believe will ensure that your credit union is around for your kids and your kids' kids. So I think I tackled most of it. There's another one around diversification. So again, this is something that isn't new to us. We've been measuring this for years. And diversification is important to us because we need to have a diversified deposit base for today and in the future. And unfortunately, where we operate today, we're seeing an aging population. No disrespect to an aging population, because we're going to continue to focus on you guys. But what we want to do and what we're asking for is that flexibility to not only focus on you guys and continue to provide you with a great organization, an organization that has 24 locations in your region, an organization that's doing amazing things for your community, but we're also looking for that flexibility to just gain a sliver of that market beyond your current region and your current provincial walls to ensure that your organization is sound going forward. So I think I covered those questions.
Okay, thank you, Dan, and thank you to the member. We have a member in Meadow Lake with a question. Meadow Lake, please.
My question is also about diversification. I was intrigued with your graphs showing the age outlines. And I'm wondering, is there a goal having been established to lower the average age from the present 48? And as the graph has been established, is there an age and or dollar value been identified? Thank you.
So I think what the question is talking about, do you remember that orange piece? And really it's saying, well, we have an average age of 48, and what we're looking to do is augment that blue with the orange. And for sure, we have a marketing strategy that talks about, well, how do we go after that orange? How are we going to effectively do that? Because some of the questions I've had so far are things like, well, those younger people don't have deposits. You know, you guys won't get that kind of growth. But there actually is. And what we're looking for is 44,000 new members. And so when you gain 44,000 new members, you can have a whole mix of different deposits. So we're looking for members that have $1,200. We're looking for members that have $8,400. We're looking for members that have $600,000. Those members are out there, and we believe that what innovation has built over the years is very appealing to those members. And we'll have a strong success beyond our current region because we're having great success today. And when you think about it, our success today is in the light where everyone gets to come in and compete with us. We don't have the ability to compete beyond our provincial walls. So when I look at the orange and I look at those 44,000 new members, and again, we're just looking for a sliver. And so what we're looking at are cities that are fast-growing cities. We're looking at cities that have lots of universities and colleges. We're looking for communities that have been recently disrupted. And what I mean by that is that, you know, there's been a lot of communities where banks have pulled out of the community. So we think that's a great opportunity for innovation to go in and be relevant to those disrupted communities. And remember, we're not going in to build branches. We're using digital marketing, so we can use a rifle approach to be able to be relevant to just about anywhere we want. And so our digital marketing plan, our plan going forward, considers all of those elements. Again, it's a part of our 8-year plan, and you know, fundamental to making sure that we augment our deposit base so we can have a better, well-diversified base. Again, not an effort to disrespect or stray away from those who've made us successful. We want to keep all of the blue. What we're looking for is just a little bit more orange. Some members that currently aren't in our current region.
Thank you. Next we will go to Glaslyn. A member in Glaslyn has a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Gary Funk. In July of 2016, the credit union in New Brunswick went federal. Do you have any idea how that worked for them? And do you know of any other credit unions that have gone federal and how it worked for them?
Okay, so that's correct. In 16, there was a credit union in New Brunswick that went federal. And out of coincidence, I was at a board meeting today with the chief financial officer of that credit union. And it's gone extremely well, right? So they had similar conversations like this where they wanted to paint the picture of the future and get support of their owners. And so they got the support. And they've been federal since then. And they also are similar to us in that they went from they had to change deposit guarantee environments, and the guarantee changed. And again, what they found is that the business actually increased. They had a better ability to focus on their communities. The savings that they created and the growth that they have has been very important for them, and it's also allowed them to even invest further in their communities. So they've had lots of success. We've visited that credit union to learn from their journey to become a federally regulated credit union. So again, a positive story, and it's one that we're leveraging as well. And then there's another credit union in British Columbia that's doing the same thing. So it's a large credit union in British Columbia. They've already had a membership vote. The membership has supported them moving to the next phase. And so they'll probably be a little bit farther down the road than we are as a credit union. But so far there is the credit union in the Maritimes. There's the one in British Columbia. There's innovation, but technically there's two more. because there's two credit unions in the north, Good Soil Credit Union and Pierceland Credit Union, that have also said, hey, we want to join with innovation and become a part of a new credit union. And so when you think about it, we technically have 5 credit unions in the country that are looking at this initiative.
Next, we will go to North Battleford. A member in North Battleford, please go ahead with your question.
I can talk now? No. Hi there, I'm one of you guys out here in North Battleford. I would like to know why, if this is such a great idea, other credit union regions are not doing the same thing within the province here. North Battleford and Swift Current amalgamated not too long ago. What's the matter with all the credit unions amalgamating into a single one and then taking on Canada together?
So that's a great question for a couple reasons. So one is that I can't speak to the other 40-some credit unions in the province, because each credit union is an autonomous entity and they go through their own process around decision making. So I can't speak to why or why not other credit unions aren't considering that. I already mentioned that there are two other ones that have said, you know what, we like what innovation does for their members, we like what they've built, and we also like the fact that they're potentially becoming a federal credit union. So there are other credit unions considering it. Our organization has presented to a number of credit unions, not only in Saskatchewan, but in other parts of Canada, around the reasons innovation thinks it's important to go federal. And when you think about it, and you think back to the slides, that's really an innovation thing. I can't stand here and say, well, it's the same situation in other parts of the province or other parts of Canada. But what I can say is that the work that we've done to arrive at this decision is sound. It's a multi-year journey, and so that's what I can say about other credit unions not or considering becoming federally regulated. The other question is around, well, why not just become one? And interestingly enough, when we had a conversation with the entire Saskatchewan credit union system about why we feel it's important for innovation to look at becoming federally regulated, we also said, hey, if you're interested in sticking around, we'd like to test drive a concept of just having one credit union in the province, because then that might do things like free up inefficiencies that reside. It might help with member confusion. It might help a lot of things. So we actually believe as an organization that it's something that the credit unions of Saskatchewan should consider. But again, that's an innovation consideration. We're not here to indicate that our strategy should be the strategy of other organizations. But we believe also that there's lots of benefit of bringing this Saskatchewan system together, because Saskatchewan credit unions are excellent organizations, and together I think that we'd even be better.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I'm going to move to some questions we're receiving online.
Excellent.
All right, first question. What makes you think that depositors in other jurisdictions will choose you instead of the institutions they already deal with? Our credit union currently has an advantage with ensuring unlimited deposits.
Okay. So I'm going to respond to that question by way of an example, because again, that question gets asked a lot. So the reason I believe that we'll be relevant beyond our current region and beyond the provincial walls is that because we're successful today. We've built a number of things in our organization that have extreme value. So let's go back to that member rewards program, and let's go back to an example. So let's say that let's fast forward, and let's say that we did get the approval from you guys to go to the next phase, and we did become federally regulated. And we're now digitally marketing beyond our provincial walls. So let's just use an example. Let's say that we find that someone in Edmonton, Alberta is a good market for us because there's low credit union penetration and a whole bunch of different reasons. There's universities, there's a good demographic there. So he or she is on their tablet, they're looking at the weather on Facebook, and innovation pops up. The first thing that'll pop up is free. right? So that person's looking at free and going, that sounds interesting because I'm now paying $9.95 a month. I pay for e-transfers. I like free because who doesn't? Right, so that's the first kind of hook that we believe will be important. So they click on that. The next thing that comes along is the fact that the more business they do with innovation, the more rewards they're going to see, right? So we've shipped back to you guys over $21.5 million back to you guys given the level of business you do. So the first hook is free. And in our research, the next hook is, holy man, if I do business with this organization, I'm actually going to get rewarded for everyday banking. And who doesn't love rewards? I mean, we all have rewards on our cards and that, but there's no other organization, especially at a federal level and as a credit union, that would have rewards for everyday banking. And then the third thing in our research that's important, and it doesn't even have to be in Edmonton, is that the first thing is free, the second thing is rewards, the third one is, and wow, this organization does amazing things for its communities. And so those are the three things that we believe that we've built, that we believe that will allow us to be successful beyond our current region, because they're successful today when everyone's coming into our space. So those are elements. And then the last one you talked about is the 100% guarantee, and for sure that's a consideration. But again, there's lots of members, and again, we've had 29,000 conversations. There's lots of members that are focused on the guarantee, but there's also some with a lot of deposits that are saying, you know what, I don't deal with you because of the guarantee. I deal with you because of your people. I deal with you because of things like free, patronage, what you do for the community. So for those who are going to be focused on the guarantee, we may not get that person in Edmonton. But for those who are looking at the value and the fact that we're a sound organization to protect their assets, their deposits, their loans, that's the example I like to talk about. I see we have a question at the mic. Do you want to go there, Ian, and then?
Yes, question in Swift Current. Mic number 2, please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Marlo Gilbertson. The one gentleman, I believe he's left over here, he mentioned the fact that each of the digital members would be considered members.
Correct.
So out of province members would have a vote as well as we do?
Correct.
So my question here now is, what are the dangers of out of province population overtaking our vote?
Yeah, so I guess if you're to go into the future and trying to understand that environment, we've had those conversations, and what we want to do is ensure that any change to what we currently have as far as governance, so right now we have 10 board members, 5 in the north, 5 in the south, any change to that has to go through the entire membership for a vote. So those are some of the things that we've talked about. But even moving forward, and I use this example a little bit too, because people are sometimes worried about that larger organization. And I go back to some of the mergers that I've been involved in, right? So I'm thinking of, well, let's think of East End Credit Union, right? So some of the conversations that they had when they were looking at a partner is, well, what are we going to give up? What's it going to look like if we go to innovation? Because right now we have our board that we're used to, where we have our own decision making, and so that leap to the other organization was the same consideration. And so in that environment, we believe that it's turned out really well for both innovation and East End. It's turned out well because they have governance, they have representation. We're very responsive to the membership. But it's pretty tough for me to say, well, what's going to happen in 8 years when we have 40,000 members outside of the province? We'll probably consider what that means. Like even today, the board has had conversations about the fact that there's 10 board members representing the members in the north and the south. And they also know that we have 5% of our membership outside of the province and a lot of members outside of our region. So they've already even talked about, should we have maybe an additional board member representing that group, just so that we are representative as a governance framework.
Okay, Dan, we just have a couple more questions and then we will move on. The first question, what are the major risks associated with federalization?
So of course, any good project considers everything, and that would be a healthy risk register to say, well, what are some of the risks? So for us, and again, this is a personal bias, the biggest risk is not doing it, right? Just staying status quo, is knowing and understanding all of the disruption, all of the things that are a part of our current region and not acting on it. So that's to me a big risk. So some of the risks going forward is, well, are we going to achieve those new members? And maybe it's going to be more difficult than we thought. So that would be one risk that we've considered. And in our plan, we have built scenarios that would accommodate that. Interestingly enough, another risk that we've considered is what happens if we're too successful? And what does that look like? So those would be some of the risks that I think that we've already captured in our business plan and that we've talked about and considered. But again, where we find comfort is that what we're doing is taking a value proposition that's successful today and working, and we're just incrementally moving it out. So the way we've accommodated some of that risk is that we're going to start slow and move out rather than going exponentially after certain markets. So that's really how we've accommodated or adapted to some of those concerns.
All right, thank you, Dan. And final question here: what will the impact of the federal regulator have on how the credit union operates, and will the credit union have to sign a buy-in clause?
Okay, so two things. So through this process, we have been meeting with our potential new regulator every couple of weeks, just to get to know them. They're getting to know us. They want to see if we're a legitimate organization. The beauty, again, I mentioned earlier, Saskatchewan credit unions are, in my estimation, one of the best group of credit unions in Canada. And the reason that is because we have great regulators. And I'm not saying that because they're here tonight. But the reality is that our regulators in Saskatchewan for quite a while have strong alignment with the federal regulators. And so even though over time, we may think we're over-regulated, but the reality is that now that innovation, as an example, is looking to go federal, the leap to go federal is insignificant because we're already under a regime that has real strong regulation, and I would say strong and fair regulation. So you guys as owners should be quite content even today that you have a great regulatory environment that mirrors and is very similar to the national one. So the leap for us, and again in our analysis, we're going to have to work on some stuff, but really that's who we are anyways. We're going to be constantly improving as an organization. And then the buy-in thing, which I think people are picking up, especially from Europe, federal credit unions do not qualify for the buy-in. The only people that qualify for the buy-in, I don't know if qualify is the right word, but are subject to the buy-in are the big banks in Canada. So that wouldn't qualify for innovation.
All right, Dan, we've had one more sneak in here. If innovation becomes a federal credit union, how will CEO and executive management compensation change? Is this going to increase?
So there's no change because we become a federal credit union. So the way we approach executive compensation is that every 2 years we go to the market and we say, what should Dan get paid relative to other organizations of similar size and similar complexity? And so that's how my compensation is built. It's on a whole bunch of market data that the board feels confident in to be able to ensure that they're adequately paying Dan. And then I go through the same process, and then the whole organization goes through the same process. So all of the staff, every 2 years, their wage goes to the market to see if we're in the zone or effectively paying our staff. So that process happens at all levels in our organization. But there's no trigger in that research that says, well, now that it's federal, then there would be any change to to compensation at the executive level. It's just market-based relative to the size and complexity of the credit union.
All right, thank you, Dan. That is all the questions we have in regard to your presentation. I'll hand it back to Bruce, I believe.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Maybe I should have answered the question on compensation. The other part of that too, Dan said that the risk of staying status quo was a personal risk. I believe that our board, our total board, considered that a real risk to staying status quo. Right now I'll make the presentation of the special resolution. So special resolution to approve the continuance of Innovation Credit Union as a federal credit union under the Federal Bank Act. Be it resolved, 1A, Innovation Credit Union is authorized to apply to the appropriate official or regulator of Canada to become a federal credit union, and B, if the application is accepted, the continuance of Innovation Credit Union as a federal credit union under the Bank Act is approved. 2, the board may abandon the application at any time prior to Innovation Credit Union becoming a federal credit union if deemed necessary without further approval of the members. A motion to approve that?
And Gord Lightfoot, and I would move that motion.
Thank you.
Is the mic on, Bruce?
Yeah, it is now. Mic's on? Yep.
Good. Could I just make a couple of comments? Or I guess we'll wait till after your second,
Yeah,
maybe.
get the seconder first, yeah. Seconded by Russ Siemens. Now it's open for discussion, Gord.
All right. Just thinking about it, and I knew I would be the one moving the motion on behalf of the board tonight, and so I was thinking about it this afternoon, and one of the things I thought about, and I did not know any of these people, but there are the people that started these credit unions way back when, and in our case, it's just about 70 years, I guess, that there's been some version of Innovation Credit Union. I think it was 1938 when the first incarnation started. Yeah. And some of those people were contemporaries of my grandfather and my father. And I was thinking, if we go down this road, and what would they think? And I was thinking back to like the stories I heard about how they started in the back of a garage here, and you know, each putting in $10 that they probably didn't have. And I was thinking they weren't afraid to take a risk. They saw a need for a cooperative financial institution. I don't think that things have changed a whole lot. We still have a need for financial institutions. I think there's still a place for a cooperative financial institution. As you mentioned and Dan mentioned, the board considered, what if we do nothing? What if we just say we're strong the way we are? We don't have to change. We can stay doing the same things we've been doing for the last 60 years. And we decided we couldn't. And of all the options that we considered, and we looked at, I think in the last 5 or 6 years, we've looked at everything from mergers to, well, I think we've considered everything that was on the table, and some that we probably looked at and just said, well, they don't fit with our cooperative principles. Right. But this is what the board and management group think is the best option for our membership. You can't ever say what's going to happen into the future, but I think this gives us a better chance of surviving into the future than any other option that we had in front of us. So right. That was my thinking, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of the board.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gord. Just a minute, Russ. For those members wishing to speak to the resolution, the floor is now open. You must be a member or a designated representative to speak to the resolution. Please use the microphone and give your name and name of entity member if you are a designated representative when speaking. Thank you. Go ahead, Russ.
Thanks, Bruce. So it's my pleasure to second that resolution. And just a couple of comments. First of all, I am a board member of Innovation Credit Union, and am pleased to represent you as members. And it's exciting tonight to have 1,000 or over 1,000 members coming together to talk about your credit union. When I represent you as a board member at the credit union, there's two things that I have in mind constantly when I'm at the board table. And those two things are, first of all, how can we return value to you as members today? How can we ensure that that value is here for you? And I'm confident that the decisions that we're able to make are in line with serving you as members. But there's a second piece that we as a board particularly have a responsibility for, and that is how do we ensure that our credit union is sustainable into the future? And that is something that each one of us as board members takes to heart. I have personally considered all of the information that is presented as part of this resolution, and I believe, and I will be voting yes in favor of this resolution as I have seconded it, because I believe that this is our greatest opportunity for our credit union to be sustainable into the future, and I would encourage you to vote yes as well.
Thanks, Russ.
We have a member here in Swift Current with a question. Microphone number 1, please go ahead.
Yes, Murray Metke again. I don't know if this is relevant, but I just wanted to know this, like it kind of moved on to this stage a little quicker than I wanted. And I wondered about like this new member in Newfoundland. He becomes a member. Now, it's not deposits that make you money, it's when you can loan those deposits out. Will you also be loaning out to these new members in other places?
Just want to, is this mic on? Can you hear me? So the initial part of our expansion is purely a deposit strategy. Remember, so that orange is really what we're trying to do in the initial years. But we believe that once we have members who are see the value in innovation and they have deposits, and again, it could be $1,200, it could be $8,000, it could be more. What we want to do at that point is again go back and then work with that member to make them, expand the wallet. And what I mean by that is that it's important for us, if we have a member and they like our organization, it's important for us to work with them to ensure that what we have lines up well with what they need. And if that's something that works, then for sure, we'd love to have more than just deposits from that member. We'd love to have a scenario where they're using our card or their phone to use us, that they're borrowing from us. And so we're building those mechanisms so that people, no matter where they are, have the ability to have a full service relationship with innovation. And again, so longer term for sure, that's exactly what we'd like to see is a whole bunch of new members that are dealing with us in multiple different ways, just like we have today.
I guess what I'm saying though is, we'll say for example you get those 44,000 members or whatever it was, and they deposit, basically they combine their deposits equal everything you have at the moment. Now, you don't make any money from deposits, do you? You only make money from loaning the deposits, correct?
Yeah, well, there's different opportunities. We don't make as much money on deposits if we don't lend them out. So that's probably the best way to explain it. But let's just look at that. So let's say that we got 44,000 new members, and we got the deposits we were looking for. We have a nice diversified portfolio. As an organization, we have lots of opportunity right here in the region to lend that out. Right? So there's examples where we could gain even more market share on the lending side right here in our region, or we could find other ways to invest that in an appropriate way in I guess at the proper risk environment to be able to take those deposits and invest them, whether it's in bonds or stuff like that, or if it's in loans. We still would have the ability to generate a return on those deposits. But in some cases, we would be able to generate that return by lending it to members right here in our region.
Okay, thank you.
All right, don't see any questions from the remote locations. Is there any more questions here in Swift Current? Okay, Mr. Chair, I believe that wraps up the questions pertaining or comments on the resolution.
Okay, thank you. I would like to thank everyone for their questions and comments. We really appreciate the engagement of our members in this process. The voting period is now open, and we will invite everyone to cast their ballots. Ian MacArthur will now describe the various methods of voting.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. All right, there is 4 ways that you as members of Innovation Credit Union can cast your ballots for this resolution. The voting period, as Chairman Bruce just announced, is now open. It will continue on until 7 p.m. on December the 8th. By now, everyone should have received or will be in the next day or so a ballot in the mail. That ballot can simply be marked, put into the envelope provided, and dropped in the mail. That will return the ballot to our Chief Returning Officer, Myers Norris Penny, and that is the first way and quite simple way to cast your vote. The second way is we do have a toll-free number, which will be in the packages you've received as well. This is a online, press 1, press 2 type of scenario. You can call that number. You will require your member number and your date of birth, and you're able to cast your ballot that way. The third way is through a number of polling stations. There is polling stations in every one of our branch locations. So you can walk into any local advice center or branch and cast your ballot in a traditional sense. You'll go up to a desk, they'll check your name off, you'll show a piece of ID, you'll receive a ballot, and you'll put it into the ballot box. We also have 2 polling stations that are now officially open here in Swift Current and at all the locations this evening. The polling stations in Swift Current is one along this wall to your left, my right, and one in the hallway on the way out. Those of you in remote locations, those polling stations will be identified to you. And thirdly is online. We do have a website set up. The address is easily findable within our web page, on our mobile app, within our online banking. You can click on that link and it will take you to a secure voting site. In the cases of where you are voting by the phone or online, you will need your date of birth and your member number. And I'll show you in a second how to get your member number. If you are voting in branch or at a polling station, you will need a piece of government-issued identification. Your member number can be found, because I don't think we all know our member number. I certainly don't know mine. It can be found in number of different ways. One is you would all received a letter in the mail with your ballot package. It has your member number on it. If you have tossed that in the garbage, which I'm sure a few people have, you can do a few other ways. Simply call our in-contact center. They'll be more than happy to provide your member number. On your online banking, your member number is clearly displayed when you log on above your account information, a nice bright green membership number. And thirdly, if you are using your online app, you can log on and hit account details and your member number will come up. When voting online, it's pretty simple. You'll go through one of those typical, please type in this word, so it makes sure that you are a real person and not a robot. And then you'll just have to put in your date of birth and member number, and a ballot will come up to mark yes or no according to your wishes. Again, we try to make this as simple as possible. We really encourage everyone that is in the locations this evening to cast their ballot before they leave by either stopping at one of the polling stations, or we will have staff members around that would be more than happy to help you vote online using your app. Once here in Swift Current, we'll have some computers set up, so hopefully it's very easy for everyone here to cast their ballot before they leave this evening. If you have any questions, track down one of the staff. I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the faces, and they'll be more than willing to help you. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Ian. We do not require a motion to adjourn. By legislation, this meeting will be concluded upon expiration of the voting period and completion of counting votes cast. Therefore, the meeting will be considered concluded on December 12, 2017, immediately following the announcement of the voting results. In closing, I'd like to thank you for attending tonight's special meeting, and we encourage everyone to vote prior to leaving tonight. Thank you very much.